What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Back Your Play with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. Check out the YouTube channel at Rich QNQ, hashtag BYP, Twitter, and IG. Our good friend and NFL Insider Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us as we start to get into the dog days of summer. You got the break in Major League Baseball. Obviously, we get into the NFL training camp. We're going to blink, and we're going to have another kickoff on the horizon. And today, as we kind of go around the NFL, we'll take a look at the AFC East. And I'm not ready to just go changing of the guard because of Aaron Rodgers with the New York Jets just yet, my friend. But obviously, the team to start would be the Buffalo Bills, 13-3. Had a bad loss to Cincinnati in the divisional matchup, 27-10, in a game in which they fell behind 14-0. Never recovered. A lot of people think, though, that maybe Buffalo, believe it or not, is a sleeper this year, which I kind of find interesting because if you look at them with the odds, plus 168 to win their division. So again, you tell me. I'm looking at this. Actually, I should say right around 130, 135. It was almost at a 170 about a month or so ago. But you tell me. I mean, they look like they are still the team to beat in the AFC, even though Miami's on the rise, New England, and the Jets acquired Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, Q, I was talking to some people around the league at an event, and they all said the same thing, that this division is on the rise, and you could possibly see maybe three teams coming out of this division going into the playoffs. So it's going to be very competitive. You talked about some of the changes, obviously Aaron Rodgers coming in there, but when the Bills, they were the prohibitive favorite over the last couple of years. And you start talking about, has the window closed? A lot of people start worrying after a certain amount of time. Sean McDermott's been there about 5 years or so. Is his message waning? But Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, their general manager, they both just got extensions, and I don't see them going anywhere. So, I know there's a lot of chatter around his team in terms of Stephon Diggs at the receiver position. Is he happy? Are they going to be able to use him the right way? But I don't think they're in full rebuild mode like a lot of people are saying. I think they're going to be a very competitive team, as you said last year, 13-3. They scored 455 points a game, which was 28 per game. And then defensively, they did a great job. I thought only allowing about 17.9 points per game, second in the NFL. So, Leslie Frazier's taking a sabbatical, and you're going to see Sean McDermott kind of come in there and take the reins of that defense. And they're really talking about Ken Von Miller, Micah Hyde, guys like that coming back from injury. Can they come help this team? So a lot of still some solid players on this team, and they're building that new stadium. So, they want that momentum up there in Buffalo.
Plus 168 point differential. They got 13 wide receivers right now on the roster. They added also Hardy. They drafted the tight end Kincaid. They also added the back Harris. You go back to that divisional round loss to Cincinnati. Diggs, 4 catches, 35 yards. They only ran at 64. They had a play from behind. Allen threw 42 times in that game for 264. Did not look sharp. They didn't look sharp the week prior. They were leaking oil against Miami, who didn't have Tua out there as well. So I still think they're the team to beat because overall, weapons-wise, I just think they have enough. Do you think there's going to be any – can you see a situation where maybe they're slow out of the gate, 2-2, 3-3, maybe 4-3 after 7 games, and Diggs is not catching, not getting his targets, not getting his reps, not getting his stats, his numbers. Can you see a situation where he starts balking a little bit, kind of like he's done in the offseason? And Josh Allen had to come out and say, well, I got to do a better job getting in the ball. I mean, once that happens, right there that you have a disgruntled wide receiver.
Yeah, Q, and he's had a lot to say. And he's got, they're not going to just let him go. And he's still top, 10, top 5 receiver out there. And yes, he's going to want his catches, but they have guys like Gabriel Davis, and they have some other playmakers on that offense. Dawson Knox, tight end as well. Obviously, they got to find a running game. Josh Allen, I believe over the years, has been getting hit way too many times running the football. And, whether it's Cook, I'm talking about, Dalvin Cook's little brother, who's been sitting there since last year. They drafted him. Harris, Murray, or Naheem Hines. They have some guys there that can kind of throw in it. And that's the modern NFL where you want to have that stable backs and you don't have that bell cow now. I did say Cook, Dalvin Cook is still out there. There's some running backs that are still looking for some opportunities. And he's been rumored in this division, whether it's Miami Dolphins, whether it's the Bills, whether it's the Jets. So he's a big wild card out there. But I do expect the Bills to be more balanced. They were still finding a way after Dable going to the Giants. They're still kind of finding a way offensively last year. And I think that had a very bad taste in their mouth as you're talking about that Cincinnati loss in the playoffs.
Yeah, we'll get to the running backs as we close the AFC East because a lot of them, as you mentioned, are still out there. Allen was sacked 33 times, second most in his career. They open up the season against the New York Jets, and they are a very slight on the road, mind you, 1-point favorites, which leads us to New York Jets 7-10. They dropped 6 straight to close the season last year. Obviously, the big news, the acquisition, Aaron Rodgers, and right away people think you can flip that record to 10-7, hell, maybe even 11-6, 12-5. We've seen, the photos. He's happy, he's smiling, he looks ripped. I mean, we always hear this with veteran guys. It's like the sun rising every day, death taxes, and the sun rising, right? It's best shape of their life. Listen, they got to get rid of that sour taste because it will not work out with Zach Wilson. I think they're putting all their eggs in the Aaron Rodgers basket. And I know I'm belaboring this point, and you probably know where I'm going with this. I still believe this has the makings of being the same type of situation it was with Brett Favre. He had those 5 touchdown performance against the Cardinals. They raced out. They had the big win against Tennessee. They were 8-3, and then the noodle arm, the injuries, they didn't make the playoffs. Now, I'm not suggesting that Rodgers is going to get hurt, but what I'm saying is I have a feeling this team is going to fade. I don't know. Everyone's just jumping on this. Here he comes. He's pissed off to Aaron Rodgers' FU tour. This isn't Tom Brady, man, right? I mean, Aaron Rodgers is not Tom Brady. Aaron Rodgers is an all-time great. But I think it was a little different with Brady because we've seen it so many times when you doubt. Aaron Rodgers had an opportunity against a bad Detroit team last year to beat them at home, mind you, and make the playoffs. And he couldn't get it done. And I think he barely cracked 220 yards in that loss.
A big thing is this is his year 40. He's going to turn 40 this season. And is he a guy that still has it at that age? And you point out some good examples. Brett Favre had a resurgence a little bit with the Jets and then kind of fizzled at the end of the season. We know Peyton Manning had a resurgence around this time, and then he didn't have much, even though they won a Super Bowl.
Yep.
His last season, and then everybody's comparing this to the Brady situation, as you said. Tom Brady, he's so unique unto himself. He was ready to roll, and remember it was the pandemic season, and he had been working from the get-go. And Rodgers has he lost the love for the game? That was the big question when he was with the Packers. He was kind of not getting along with younger players, fighting with the front office. He and the head coach seemed to have a good rapport, but you always heard whispers about that as well. And yes, he's in New York and he's supposed to be reborn, but there's a lot of moving pieces to this team. I know that Mekhi Becton is a big piece on the offensive line. He's coming back from injury. Coming out of Louisville, he was the guy everybody thought could protect the edge of the next great offensive lineman out there. And we'll see if he can come back to full strength. But he's a guy that really going to need. Breece Hall, they're a good young running back who's doing a great job. He's going to need to come back and be healthy. And then Rodgers is bringing some older players with him, like Randall Cobb and some other guys. And how do they fit with Garrett Wilson and some of these other players that are left over? So, it was a story of 2 sides of the ball for the Jets last year. They only scored about 17 points a game, which was 29th in the league, 18 points a game or so, which was 4th in the NFL. So, Sauce Gardner and the rest of those guys on defense, they do have a very good defense, but is Rodgers ready to step in there and be the leader? And then, the off season, they have a limited amount of time to work. It's not as much as they were in the past. Can he gel with these guys and get them moving? And of course, as you said, stay healthy is the big key for them.
Jets plus 250 to win the AFC East. This would alarm me if I'm a Jets fan. So they open with Buffalo, on the road against Dallas, home against New England. Look, Belichick is still Belichick. I get it. There's no Brady. It's Jones. New England always beats them. At home against Kansas City, on the road against the new look Broncos, then back home against the Philadelphia Eagles. That is a brutal stretch to start a season. Buffalo, Dallas, New England. I mean, you're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games a bye, and then the Giants. If this team's 2-4, 1-5, all of a sudden, same old Jets. If they're 3-3, 4-2, you might have a different feel going into that bye. So the first couple of games are going to totally dictate their season. And I don't know how much stock do we put in this Aaron Rodgers having fun and revitalized and reborn and looks jacked and shredded and went into the cave and the hole and he's come out this new man, this person. You still ultimately, you have an offensive line that at times can be shaky. You have an aging quarterback. He got nicked up, banged up last year. So I don't know. I mean, listen, if they're 2-4 and he's thrown 5 picks in 6 games, then you just can, not going to pass the smell test. You know where the season's heading, right? So I don't know.
Right.
If they don't make the playoffs, we would both agree that it's a major disappointment. I mean, you bring in Aaron Rodgers, expectation is to win a division and make a deep run into the playoffs.
Yeah, and all the talk, don't forget, they gave up. It could be possibly a number one, and they gave up a 2
Oh
this year.
yeah.
So,
Yep.
depending on his playing time, and then
Yep.
you get the expectations too. All the back pages of the paper in New York City. This is not Green Bay, and all eyes are going to be on him. Yes, the Giants are still a big story last year with Dan Jones. They made the playoffs and won a game. But all eyes are going to be on Aaron Rodgers, and he's been at all these public events. He was at the Knicks playoff game and all this stuff, and he's out in public and he's not as brash as he used to be. He's not surly with people, and we'll see how long this honeymoon lasts. And as
Yeah.
you said, those first couple games, they're buys in week 7, but you know when you're playing Kansas City, the Eagles, teams that were in the playoffs, and then they have their huge rivalry game mixed in there with the Patriots. There's a lot to be said, and they got to get him ready. And Robert Saleh, he is on the hot seat. Woody Johnson's a guy he invests, but he wants results. And we know the Jets have not won the Super Bowl since Joe Namath. It's been a very long time, and their fan base and their owners really want to see that change.
Yeah, and now remember too, they get all those primetime games as well. Tuesday edition of BYP. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd Vance join us from our good friends over at Scoots Liquors, Bait and Tackle. Come check out local craft beer selections, all the fine hard seltzers, newest ready to drink cocktails, not to mention a place for all your beer, wine, and spirits. They also offer camping supplies, crab traps, coolers, full line tackle shop featuring live minnows and worms. I mean, think about that for you guys. I love to fish. 1004 Route 206 in Chemung, New Jersey. You got beer, bait, and bobbers all under one roof. All right, Miami Dolphins sitting there at plus 250. 9-8 last year, -2 point differential. They had that great start to the season. Tua looked like a perennial MVP candidate, was playing like it. Everything kind of went south. They had to go with the kid. I think it was Thompson in that playoff game that they hung around against Buffalo. But listen, I think the storyline for me with the Miami Dolphins, it centers around the quarterback. I mean, period, because unfortunately, this kid is potentially one more hit away from being knocked out of his career, and that's pretty much all she wrote. But look, I'll say this. His numbers last year, 3,500 yards. We're talking 13 games played now, so he was going to go over 4,000. 25 touchdowns, 8 picks, only sacked 21 times, and just had to deal with multiple concussions, right? And that was kind of the situation that derailed the season for the Miami Dolphins. They had all that momentum. They lost it. They finally found a way to get in the playoffs. And I don't know, does Tua make a difference in that playoff game? Who knows? But in any event, 9-8, a lot of people think they could maybe, if things break, win the division. Where are you right now with the Miami Dolphins?
Yeah, very, very interesting team you're talking about too. All eyes on them, and Chris Greer, the general manager there, and Mike McDaniel, the head coach. He's a guy from the Shanahan tree, and he's a mad scientist on offense, and he's going to try to create mismatches with that they have so much speed on this team now, with
Yeah.
Tariq Hill and the rest of the guys. They're going to try to get the football down the field. Now that's Tua is accurate down the field and but just his arm strength. You always wondered about that. And as you said, very shaky when he was not healthy and not playing. This team was so. The concussions are a big factor. I know
Yep.
he's been doing jiu-jitsu, and he looks a lot bigger. You can see some tape I was just watching. He looked like he gained about 10 to 15 pounds of muscle. He's been in the gym. That's all well and good, but when they start hitting him for real,
Yes.
all that training to fall the right way. When you have some 300-pound lineman landed on you, I don't care if you know how to learn to roll over your elbow or not. It's going to be a big hit. So
Yeah.
they did a good job in the draft. Everybody gave them A's and that in terms of the people they're bringing in and everything. But as you're saying, got to keep him healthy and then see how everything shakes out. So their schedule, I was looking at them. It's going to be interesting. They're at the Chargers, playoff team. They're at the New England Patriots, Denver, and then they're at Buffalo, the Giants, Carolina, and then at Philadelphia. So they have a lot of road games to start the season. And then they have New England, and then are at Kansas City, and then they're buying week 10. So,
Brutal.
the schedule's it's not helping them.
Yeah.
So we'll see if they're able to make that late season push and they're going to put up some points with that offense, and they rebuilt the line as well. So, all eyes are pointing to him to be a playoff contender. They snuck in last year, as you were saying. We'll see what they can do. They scored 23 points per game last year, 11th in the league, but they did allow 23 and a half each game, which was 24th in the NFL. So, they got to fix that defense. The defense has got to get more natural pressure. Yes, they have Xavier Howard and some guys on the back end that can cover, but they got to get more turnovers and they have to get more pressure back.
They started off 3-0. They lost to Bridgewater, Thompson, then Bridgewater. They lost to Cincinnati, the Jets, Miami. They got Tua back. They beat Pittsburgh. That was an ugly game. They beat Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, and then they beat Houston. So think about this: 3-0, 3-3, then 5 straight to 8-3. Then he was banged up again. Tough loss against San Fran, and that kind of set the stage for them to drop. What was it? 5 straight, and then they were able to salvage that playoff berth by beating the Jets the last game of the season, and they did that with Thompson as well. Thompson, it's just point is Tua is kind of the heartbeat of that team. And you mentioned defensively, 33, 23, 32, 26, 33. He was never the same quarterback. So your defense has to lift up the offense and your quarterback as well. And you highlighted the strength of schedule, which is going to be tough for Miami. They have to, just like the other teams we mentioned. I really think for every team in the NFL, jump out of the gate early, but they're sitting there at plus 250. And then New England plus 800, 8-8, plus 17-point differential. And you go from Tua to the other quarterback in Mac Jones, 22-13 his rookie year in 17 games, 14 touchdowns, 11 picks in 14 games last year. I was never sold on the kid. I don't think the kid's a very good quarterback. And I'm not going to sit here and say, is this it for Belichick? I mean, listen, he's not accustomed to losing, is Bill Belichick. He doesn't have patience. He wants a quarterback that can be that system quarterback that knows how to run the offense, and they're going to win games. And he can kind of sit back and worry about the defense, right? And not be worried about the offense. You can't do this with Mac Jones. And then you talked a little bit about Miami real quick. New England's defense, listen, I mean, he cracked 300 yards passing twice last year, but they wound up giving up 33 and 37 points and losses to the Vikings and Baltimore. So their defense leaves something to be desired, but I'm not sold on the quarterback. I'm not sold on New England. I think it's going to be a rough season for the Patriots. They have no offense.
Yeah, too, and you got to start with Bill Belichick, and you have to wonder is there trade winds coming? Because you had Brady go down to the Bucs and have some success, and here's Belichick sitting there. He's looking older, and I think he's approaching 70, and how much does he have left? Does he still have the same fastball that he had at one point, where he was considered the greatest coach and he was going to break Don Shula's wins record? And
Mhm.
you're starting to wonder about that because he drafts Mac Jones, as you're saying, coming out of Alabama, and um, he's a solid system quarterback from college. That's what I would call Mac Jones. But he's not a difference maker in my opinion. And the offense is struggling. He only scored 21 points per game last year, 17th in the league. Defensively, they allowed 20, 11th in the league. So they did a pretty good job. Everybody, of course, is going to blame um, Joe Judge and who was the quarterback's coach, and Matt Patricia, who was oddly given the job. In terms of calling plays offense when he was always a defensive guy. Now, Matt Patricia's here in Philadelphia where I am, and he's going to be assistant defensively for the Eagles. And Belichick's got to fix this offense, as you're saying. They got to put some points on the board, but is Mac Jones the guy to do this? And they're another team, you wonder who's that playmaker that they have. I know maybe they bring in DeAndre Hopkins. There have been some rumors about him coming there, but you wonder they just signed Devontae Partner to extension, a guy who really is not getting great separation, and who's going to be that playmaker that can put some points up for them because New England, as you talk about, right now you have to think they're in the basement of the division, and maybe Robert Kraft eventually will make a change there because Belichick can only live on all the Super Bowl rings for so long.
Yeah, it's a good point with the coordinator position, right? Judge basically worked with the quarterbacks. But you look at Jones's numbers, completion percentage, yards per game, touchdowns per game, passer rating, QBR, all dropped from his rookie year. So, okay, let's bring back Bill O'Brien, right? Um, I don't know if, you've heard some ex-Patriots, Asante Samuel, one of them, talk a little bit about, the gadgets don't work, the coaching's, it's not resonating, right? It's just not, it's not there anymore with Belichick, and, it's a chicken or the egg, who made who. I think it's a culmination of both, but I just don't see how this team's going to generate any type of offense. I mean, if I looked at this team and I start to look at their win total and some of these over unders for some of these games, I'm probably going to hammer the under a lot of times, because especially if they're going against teams that are offensively inclined like they are to not score points. I just don't see them mustering any type of offense. And I mean, look, can there be a scenario where they finish 6-11 and Belichick decides, call it a career? Or are you hoping that if everything goes south, maybe then you've got more quarterbacks coming out, higher profile names coming out, right? That, Belichick says, all right, give me another year or two. I mean, it's very uncharacteristic for this team to go through quarterbacks. Brady leaves, what happens? Cam Newton, now Mac Jones, and a couple backups. I mean, it's not Patriot-like, I guess, is the point.
Yeah, and he may very well like Bailey Zappi, who was 2-0 in the two
There you
games they
go. Yep.
started. And he may be stuck with Mac Jones because they drafted him so high. But there's no one to blame for himself. He's basically their de facto general manager as well. I'm hearing situations though, Q, maybe if he leaves, he's going to want that Mike Holmgren type situation where Holmgren leaves to Packers and then he goes to the Seattle and he gets total control. So anywhere Belichick goes, that's what he's going to want. And he's going to talk about what happened with Andy Reid. You know what I mean? Where Andy Reid leaves Philadelphia and has a whole new rebirth somewhere else. I just don't see, Belichick, this is his life. I just can't see him going, doing anything else other than being a head coach of football now. The key thing, though, is has he had too much nepotism? He has both his sons working for him in terms of, uh, it's weird. They don't have a de facto defensive coordinator, but one of them is the safeties coach and one of them is the linebackers coach. So what's he got left? So we're
Yeah.
we're, we're going to see. It all starts. They got the Philadelphia Eagles first game of the season, and they have Miami. These are both home games. They're at the Jets, at Dallas, New Orleans, at the Raiders, and then they had host Buffalo. So, you know, we'll know very early on what type of season it's going to be for these guys. But I think it's going to be a long one. Right now, we always try to stack the division. I firmly have them as team number 4 in the AFC East.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the Bills division to lose, and then Miami and the Jets. Listen, if they can surprise with Rodgers, so be it. We'll do our predictions obviously closer to season. So as far as the running backs, you kind of mentioned Melvin Gordon's still out there. You've got Elliott, Dalvin Cook, Kareem Hunt, Leonard Fournette. So it's amazing too. You've brought back the whole Todd Gurley kind of situation when he got released from the Rams in 2020. He inked that 4-year, $60 million contract extension, $45 million in guaranteed with the team back in July 2018. When McVay turns around and says that I'll never pay a running back again, and I can just kind of use these guys and rotate them in and out. That statement was made, and then they turn around, they won the Super Bowl. Salary for the running back position, I pulled it up. Franchise tag for backs in 2015 was $10.93 million. This offseason, it was $10.09 million. So it's telling you right there that the running back, it's a dismissive position. Like we don't even care anymore about the running back position. I mean, we want to run the football, but we'll use kind of like running back by committee. These guys are not getting paid. I mean, I'm talking about some talented backs right here that still have not found a home. I guess, why all of a sudden has the running back position just kind of disappeared over the last 5-10 years in the NFL?
And I was just looking at stats. There's 15 backs last year that got 1,000 yards. So that barometer is just not where it used to be because it's a pass happy league. You have all these teams throwing the football all over the place, and I hate to get into X's and O's, but you see it all the time where they're getting in the red zone, within the 5-yard line, and they're going spread. You know what I mean? They're not. Their objective is not to pound the football like it used to be, and these offensive linemen are getting later, and guys that are quick blocking, the quick pass sets, and they're getting the ball out of their hands quicker. But I always do firmly believe as the season goes on and the weather gets yuckier outside, in these outdoor stadiums,
Yep.
that you had to have a running game. So
Agree.
it was a great question that you asked because, growing up, you and I, we always saw that every team had that running back, and that was the key position. That was the guy, whether it was Marshall Faulk, LaDainian Tomlinson, going back way back in the day, Earl Campbell types, and they carried their teams. But now, as you're saying, you get these general managers and they're growing up. A lot of them are offensive quarterback type of guys where they want a quarterback that's developed that can throw the football. They'd rather throw the ball, for a first down when it's 3 yards or less than run it up the middle. So, and then you have teams like you're saying, like the Chiefs last year with Pacheco and the rest of their stable backs, they were able to spread the carries around. And then you don't have that wear and tear. And also you don't have wear and tear also associated with a big part of your salary cap, which the Dallas Cowboys kind of found out with Ezekiel Elliott. They gave him all that money for past production, and then he kind of didn't live up to it. So, it's crazy. We'll see if it's ever going to turn around. But as I watch the game, whether it's high school or college and the pros, it just seems so pass happy. So that's kind of like the extinction of the running back. Now you're going to get running backs that can kind of go in the slot and catch some passes,
Yeah.
as well as run the football between the tackles, and that's going to be very important. But I think a big thing is you got to have pass pro from these running backs, and some of these guys just can't do it, and they have to be able to pick up the blitz, and it's a necessary evil. But as you're saying, they're just not going to pay him because the cap number, the franchise number, went from 12 down to 10, and that was the only position where it decreased.
Yeah.
Was the running back position, and then you get guys like Melvin Gordon. He's upset. Why can't I get a job? But he's 30 and he's looking at the end of his career, which is crazy.
Lastly, did you hear what Lombardi said on McAfee's show regarding Matthew Stafford? Right, talk about equity in the NFL. You win a Super Bowl, maybe you get a pass here and there. They were trying to trade him prior to 2022, 2023, right? So they ultimately had to pick up his option and bonus and 2024 salary. So they had to absorb 59 million. They knew there was no way around the 59 million. They couldn't get around. And I mean, think about this. He turns around, plays well, right? They were leaking oil, played well, put up big numbers. All those years in Detroit, comes in Rams, they win a Super Bowl. Then what happens the following season? We've seen it how many times. You get hurt, you get banged up, the production drops a little bit. But that again tells you, again, man, that option bonus when it starts to get ready to that kicker to kick in. I got to figure out a way to trade you, man. I don't want to take on this type of money, especially for an aging quarterback. You already got us what we wanted. We put all our eggs in the basket, but it's crazy that you're talking about a 2022, right? Super Bowl winning starting quarterback, and they tried to trade him before the new year, new league year in early September. I find that fascinating, but it just speaks to how much of a business the NFL is. And I mean, look, it's what have you done for me lately?
It is. What have you done from the Q? And it's a year-to-year league. So these general managers, they're young guys. They're not going to sit and have that 5-year plan that we always talked about way back in the day. These older GMs, they were willing to set course, whether it's Ernie Corsi or some of these guys, they're like, all right, if I have 2, 3 good drafts, I'm able to stockpile players. Year 4, year 5, this team's going to be dominant, and I can win some Super Bowls. But these guys, they want to win now, and they always think they can kind of, I don't want to say fantasy football it, but kind of just chop it up and sew it together each off season, and they think it's going to turn around real quick. Yes, every season we know for about the last 29, 30 years, there's been 4 new teams in the playoffs. So you can go worst to first and jump in there. But I think for sustained success, you've got to have the coach, you got to have the quarterback, and some very good drafts. So, it is surprising Stafford delivered that Super Bowl. They made the big trade for him. It all worked out. But it wasn't just him. He's injured. He didn't have Cooper Kupp, and there were a lot of moving things. I can't think that McVay thinks it's all him. You know what I mean? He
Yeah.
had to have the quarterback because when he had Goff, they were winning, but you just didn't feel like they could win the Super Bowl championship with a guy like Stafford delivered it.
Right. Yeah. And they scored. I mean, they couldn't even score against New England in that Super Bowl with Goff a couple of years ago. At Lloyd Vance, our NFL Insider on BYP, always kind enough to join us. Next week, how the West was won, the AFC West. We'll put this sucker up on the YouTube channel at Rich Q on Q. Give Lloyd a follow as always. All right. I always appreciate you, pal. I know, listen, summer's right around the corner. I know we're going to try to get one of the young ones on, talk a little bit about his career, college right around the corner.
Yes. Yeah. He tells me he wants to do mass communications as his major and do some on camera stuff. He saw me talking with Steve Leitch and all that. And he said, oh, maybe I could do this. And so he says he wants to, I got to get him out of bed, but yeah, we're going to get him on camera. And he says he knows football better than his dad. So we'll see what he can do.
Let's just see, that's the cockiness right there, right?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. He's got a good mentor to learn from. So we might have to humble him a little bit.
There we go.
On the air, but always appreciate you, pal. And we'll do it again next week. We'll take a look at the AFC West on this edition of BYP.
All right, Q. Thanks for having me on.
You got it.